Welcome to another session of Ecosystem Engage, the Not So Daily Show. I'm your host, Amit Gupta, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the real estate sector, the impact on the real estate sector, the transformation that we could expect given the current crisis, and the role that PropTech will play in helping the industry recover. I'm joined today by one of the stalwarts of the real estate industry in this part of the world, Hari Krishnan, who's the group CEO for PropertyGuru, the largest online business for the real estate sector. Obviously, they have a huge impact on the industry and the consumption, as well as supporting the broader industry. So, Hari, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by Andrew Milroy, who's a long-term observer and analyst in the IT and telecoms industry, who's worked with some of the biggest names in the analyst world, and we're now fortunate to have him as part of our team. And Andrew has been covering and looking at the PropTech markets very closely, and I'm really excited to get into this conversation today. So, Hari, let me start off with you. You've been a digital leader for a long time, right? And for those of you who are watching this episode and not familiar with Hari, Hari is the group CEO for PropertyGuru, and he's been running the business, steering the ship for the last 5 years. And prior to that, Hari was the head of region and managing director for LinkedIn Asia Pacific. So digital is not new to Hari at all. Hari, our lives are changing. We're starting to get a lot more reliant on digital engagement, social media. Now, I know on a personal note, I've always referred to you and your wife as the power digital couple. So while Hari runs PropertyGuru now and used to run LinkedIn, his wife is the managing director for Twitter Asia Pacific. So we're sure you've got some really interesting best practices to share with us in terms of digital engagement in these times. So let me kick it off with, I guess, the impact on people. That's the biggest, the most important critical factor at the moment. There is an economic impact, but the impact on people is first and foremost. And that means looking after your employees, your customers, your partners. Give us a sense, Hari, on how you've dealt with keeping engaged, not just with your teams, but with your markets and with your partners and customers. And at the same time, keeping them inspired as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Amit. Now, these are obviously very unique times. And I think it's, I've said this a few times to a few different people, it's a true test of leadership. Your ability to lead teams, potentially broader stakeholder groups through challenging times. And what makes it particularly challenging is that this is not, first and foremost, is not an economic crisis, it's a health crisis. And when you think about that, the physical safety and physical well-being becomes priority one before you think about anything else. And so when you think about our stakeholders, whether it was our employees or our direct customers, we started first and foremost by addressing that. So being really clear and concise in our communication. There's a lot of information flowing in all directions, making sure the communication is consistent, but also clear and concise directly from the top is important. I have been doing a weekly video, which is about 1 or 2 minutes long, that goes to all gurus, all PropertyGuru employees. We have about 1,300 employees in 5 different markets. It goes to all of them. And they're able to engage with me in that way, but they're also able to get that information directly on why we're making certain decisions and what that decision is. It's not very long, so it's easy for them to process. They can rewatch it if necessary. All these little elements become very important when you think about use of digital technology. Just because you can do a video, there's no point in a 30-minute video. No one's going to watch it. So doing a 1 or 2 minute video, getting to the punchy points, making sure that someone puts a little bit of a digital overlay, a little bit of post-production, essentially. All of this improves the experience. And you really need to think of your employees, in this case, as viewers, and what makes it entertaining for them, and what makes it informative to them. And so we started first by making it really clear that their health was important. We made sure their physical and mental well-being was taken care of. And then equally with our customers, we started first by making sure that we have customers even in China. And so, we were impacted right from the tail end of January, even before it really had shown up in Southeast Asia and in Singapore. And so we shipped masks to Asian customers in China. We've shipped masks and hand sanitizers and various other things to both agents and developers across Southeast Asia. And so we started first with those physical things. And then we went to the economic elements where we sort of essentially had to make sure people understood the economic decisions we were making. So whether they be, what were the commercial terms that our customers could enjoy. So in some cases, we've extended the validity of certain products. We've offered certain discounts to new customers who are evaluating us but hadn't quite pulled the trigger yet, making sure that they could still participate in the market in challenging times, but understanding that their economic reality has changed. And for our employees, making it really clear as to what is their economic reality. I mean, we've been fortunate enough that, as of date, there have been no job impacts. We have made changes when it came to our marketing budget, and obviously travel is completely frozen. A few other discretionary elements have been cut. But I think priority one we've communicated from the beginning was making sure that first, their physical and mental well-being was taken care of, and then their financial well-being was taken care of. And to date, we have been able to do that. But I think the other thing is also you got to treat people like adults and explain to them it's a dynamic situation, it's evolving. And depending on how late it goes into the year and the sort of the financial viability of the business, we would have to obviously revisit and reevaluate all these decisions. And I think what the feedback I've been receiving from our employees and definitely from our customers has been gratitude for the transparency, gratitude for the speed of the decision making. We were the first to move in our sector in most of these cases. And for our employees, just gratitude for the ability to know that they're working for a company that cares about them and understands that first it's a health crisis and then an economic crisis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Hari. And by the way, I love the term you use for your teams, gurus. They must love that as well. Very, 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 very impressive. But look, your sector is more than any other sector requires a lot of physical engagement, requires viewings, we know, and there's a set pattern in how things are done. But obviously you lead a digital business in your industry and are, fair to say, at the forefront of it in terms of what digital means for the real estate sector. So I wanted to get a sense from you on first and foremost, what is the impact of COVID on the industry, on the real estate industry as a whole, across the various facets? But also at the same time, given that this is COVID-19, this is a watershed moment, right? It is going to lead to change in lots and lots of different ways. In some ways, we'll go back to the old ways of doing things, but some things will shift permanently. There will be certain shifts in our own lifestyles, our patterns. What is the opportunity you see for digital transformation to actually help the sector recover? So I've put in two questions into one, but I thought I'll give you both of those in one go so that can get your views.
I think first and foremost, it's important to understand real estate is the largest asset class in the world. It's very unique when you think about it in that way. And then for a lot of people in our part of the world, the house or the home, particularly residential real estate, is much more than an economic decision. It's an emotional decision. In many cases, it's the first generation of a family that's going to own a home. The emerging middle class, urbanization, what have you. 100,000 people move to Ho Chi Minh City every year. They need homes. Some of them are looking to own homes. And so I think there are two categories to keep in mind when you think about Southeast Asia, which is a little different from the developed world. In most markets, we operate in 5 markets, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. I'll talk outside Singapore and then inside Singapore. Outside of Singapore, the real focus is on primary real estate, new construction, new projects, new apartment blocks, essentially. And the biggest challenge there is that people have gotten used to visiting show flats, visiting the booking offices, in some cases, the construction sites. And in many cases, it's a very practical reason. They want to understand distances. What are the commute times? You look in markets like Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia even. What are the commute times from there to their offices, to schools, closest public transportation, what have you. And I think that is something that people have gotten used to. But going back to my first point, because it's such a large asset class, it's a high consideration purchase. So that is also an advantage, because people are going to spend months making this decision. This is not something that you can just get peppered, get a quick discount and pull the trigger. There are some investors who might do that, and we're talking about the very wealthy. But for the vast majority of people over here, they're not going to buy it sight unseen, and they're going to spend a long time doing their research. And that is actually sort of perfect for a digital solution. There are no better solutions for research than digital solutions. All of us have gotten used to search engines, bulletin boards, what have you, over the last 25 years to analyze everything. Why not real estate? And I think we obviously, our pedigree 13 years ago, we started in Singapore as a classified site. So it started as advertising, information, access to inventory, that's simple, and really focused on resale and rental. But as we moved into primary real estate, we've expanded our offerings. We run the most widely used sales process automation software product called FastKey. And that product in the COVID reality has really been taken a big step forward. Developers see it as a great opportunity to get transparency into their sales cycle, for them to do lead nurturing, for them to understand what consumers are interested in their under construction projects. But for the consumer as well, we've been able to put visualization software in the front of this. And so if you're a consumer who's right now locked down and unable to visit a physical show flat, you are able to experience this digital solution either directly on PropertyGuru or by talking to your agent who is using a PropertyGuru app essentially to guide you through various unit types, maybe even visualizations of the entire project, cityscapes and such. So that technology has gone a long way forward. But when coupled with CRM or inventory management software, it becomes potent, because now the consumer can not just see what the project looks like, they can see what's the unit availability. They can click on a particular unit, then double click, go in, look at the floor plan, have a walkthrough. So it looks like you're walking through the entire unit. And you can do a lot of your research while you're seated at home. And I think, obviously, I'm sure Andrew has some ideas as well. I'd love for him to jump in. But I think what I'll end this at is, I think this is a behavior that will not regress. Now that we are beginning to train consumers in this way, and consumers, by the way, are used to this. They use Netflix and Airbnb and everything else in every other space. So they're coming to real estate expecting this. And now that they're getting this solution, they're not going to go back.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very interesting point. I mean, I think the key thing is that this whole COVID thing is expediting the adoption and the usage of some of the technologies you described, such as the visualization. But one thing I would say that's quite surprising in a lot of markets is how the real estate market, hasn't really matured or evolved or adopted technologies as fast as some other sectors have. The experience people go through, there's still a lot of physical contact. There's still a lot of processes, not just in the traditional visiting or looking at a property, but going through the legal agreements. It's all face to face. A lot of that could be done online, for example. A lot of that could be automated. A lot of the other processes associated with it, delivery, sourcing the correct mortgages and so on. A lot of this activity has still involved a lot more face-to-face activity than is necessary or profitable or even effective. So I think that perhaps what COVID is doing is just moving us away from that burning platform, let's say, and pushing the real estate market across the board into using digital technology, where it makes sense and where it has made sense for a while, but it's just forcing that forward.
So you see a huge opportunity, Andrew, for a platform play across the region, in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ripe for a kind of Uberization. I don't wish to overkill that phrase, but I think there's an opportunity for platforms like PropertyGuru to be the go-to platform for people for anything to do with their property, with their residential property. So not just inspecting properties that they might want to purchase or working with a real estate agent, but also other activities like sourcing the best mortgage and doing that rapidly and effectively, and other things associated with property like renovations, for example, or shipping or delivery, anything to do with it. There's an opportunity for platform like PropertyGuru to start offering more and a much better customer experience. On top of that, the platform could seek to find ways of keeping that customer engaged post-purchase. So, for example, let's say you live in a certain condo in Singapore, the platform might be able to push out some renovation that a similar unit has experienced and propose that as maybe a renovation option for one of its customers. I mean, that's just an example, but there are lots of other kinds of services that could be offered just to keep that customer engagement going over a longer period of time. Rental as well. So if you own a property and you're looking at renting it out, services to help landlords, that kind of thing.
And Hari, are you seeing that as an opportunity play for you guys at PropertyGuru? And is this something that you've been considering?
Yeah, I think over the last 5 years that I've been there, I think definitely the transformation has been one of being what was largely a very successful online advertising solution to a digital product which has data at the core. So in the end, what we're trying to do is actually use that data to help people make more confident property decisions. So specifically, for example, earlier this year in Singapore, we launched PropertyGuru Finance. And what we've seen over the last several years is we've had the most widely used mortgage calculator in Singapore for a long time, best part of a decade. But it was just an advertising product that allowed consumers to get a sense of what they could afford. What we realized is, though fintech has evolved so much in this city state, mortgages have not evolved at all. And I think what's happened is I went through the unfortunate experience of refinancing my home about 18 months ago. And the reality was I was filling multiple physical forms with several banks, the same form again and again, multiple documents, everything was physical. Almost nothing was digital. And we saw this as a huge missed opportunity. Also, we realized that it was still very much in the consumer's hand to go and sort of do this exploration. It really wasn't the financial services companies that were pushing or offering solutions that were dynamic. And so what we are trying to do is actually use this intelligence that we have in understanding the consumer life stage when it comes to their real estate journey and help them understand and explore their financial options, because we see that as an immediate extension of it. And obviously it's very, very core to owning, buying, and frankly, continuing to own a home. And in times like this where cash flow is so negatively impacted, whether it be salaries, job losses, or even just people trying to manage their cash flows, I think what we've been talking about the last 2 months in Singapore has been very much around, have you explored refinancing? Refinancing is basically a non-existent sector in Singapore. If you look at the data, it's a very, very small percentage of loans that get refinanced. And the reason for that is the brokerage market basically doesn't exist. And the reason for that is the brokers are highly fragmented and offline and traditional. They don't use much technology. They don't provide much value. So neither the banks nor the consumers see much value of going through them. So you're going directly from bank to bank to bank as a consumer, and no one wins with that. And so this journey with COVID in particular, we have pivoted from not just being about financing, but being really about refinancing. So much so that we've actually reached out to partner organizations, other companies essentially, and said, hey, would your employees want to look at refinancing this? Would you like to offer this as a benefit? So this is a way in which the platform is being extended out, direct B2C, but also using influencers such as employee groups to say, hey, all your employees are going to want to manage cash flow. Let's start with our home financing needs.
Yeah. And you could reach out to people through that platform. So users of that platform who, register with it, you could reach out to them and say, hey, have you thought of these financing or refinancing options? Because right now, there are very attractive ones around with this COVID-19 scenario. Obviously, with interest rates having gone down significantly, I just locked myself in at the end of January to one, which was it seemed like a great deal at the time. A fixed mortgage for, below 2% seemed great. For a couple of years, but obviously you can get much better deals right now. But pushing those kind of offers out to people is clearly something that the platform play could do.
Yeah, and look, just I know, Hari, that you're very passionate about technology. I know there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with what you guys are working on, but what we see as consumers because most of us get in there just to find the best options to buy or rent and so on. So, but there is a lot more. Your ecosystem is a lot bigger. Last year, you launched a product that was an immersive technology product that you launched for the market to help consumers get a better experience when they're looking at real estate options. And interestingly, on one of the previous episodes that I did with the Chief Digital Officer of M1, Nathan Bell, he actually gave, because they've just been awarded a 5G license for Singapore. And one of the use cases he gave was exactly what you've talked about before. And so do you see, with the award of the 5G licenses, do you see that this is going to become a lot more mainstream? And if you can share your experience in terms of what you launched last year and how you expect that to shape and impact the consumer experience.
Yeah, I think 5G is going to change the world. I don't think people fully even understand just how fundamentally it'll change it. Some of it we'll see in our hands. Some of it will just power things that, frankly, we don't, as average consumer, we don't care how it gets powered. But 5G is actually a precondition to delivering those things seamlessly. And I think for us, the product we launched was last January. It's called PropertyGuru Lens. It's only in Singapore for now. It's an iOS app solution, essentially a visual search product. It's the first of its kind in the world, where for the first time, consumers essentially open up the PropertyGuru iOS app in Singapore, point it essentially at a building, and we'll tell you what listings are in it. It's pretty intuitive from a consumer perspective. You're used to visual search when it comes to information and products. I think Google and Amazon have made sure we got trained on it, Alibaba as well, of course. And so visual search became important. I think what we understood is the most important device any of us have is our phone. And increasingly, the most important part of the phone became the camera. And so the question became, what are we going to do when it came to property discovery and search, which is basically our business, connecting demand with supply. And what we sort of worked on was a product which used our proprietary data, custom-built machine learning. It's built on Google's TensorFlow open source solution, and a little bit of geospatial data. And it's actually it's surprisingly difficult. I think one person actually called it the Pokemon Go of property. Essentially, the idea is you pop it up, you have these AR, augmented reality beacons essentially on a building. But if I'm visiting your apartment now, love your neighborhood, want to understand what apartments go for, either rental or resale, what people typically would have done is open up their PropertyGuru app, had to punch in an address, do all of that, or maybe map search. But this is an evolution of map search, it's visual search. And I think the product has had good adoption, but obviously, as you might imagine, it's the most passionate real estate guys who are going to use it. They're the ones who are going to push it the hardest. They're the ones giving us feedback, and it's evolving. And I think it's made progress. Platforms like 5G will raise expectations. I've always said the biggest disruptor when it comes to real estate, Andrew said it, I fully agree. I've spent 20 years in technology. This is the sector that is the furthest behind when it comes to technology adoption. A lot of it is to do with regulatory drag. The governments want to make sure that things are really careful. It's a massive asset. So, fears around fraud, etc. A lot of things are rational reasons. But frankly, I think there are technology fixes for many of those. But I think what you're going to see with 5G is immersive technology is going to change. And going back to my point, the biggest disruptor to property is consumer expectations. Consumers are going to come expecting artificial intelligence similar to what they get when they're watching a video streaming. They're going to expect an immersive experience similar to what they get when they do online travel. And they're going to expect the immediacy of what they get when they do food delivery. But they are going to expect this for an asset class that is so much larger, that is so much less forgiving. You have a bad holiday, you may be irritated. You make a bad property purchase, it could impact multiple generations of your family. So I think you've got to be much more deliberate about the technology delivery. But I think we're going to have this schism in people's heads where they're going to expect it, and yet they're going to expect this sort of enterprise grade protection behind it, which they don't expect when it comes to entertainment or food.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to that, and to reinforce the point that the property sector has been a relatively late adopter of a lot of emerging technologies, and it really is ripe for disruption across the board. And obviously, PropertyGuru is playing a very significant role in that. 5G, obviously some of the offerings that Harry's just described, it can just take that further and offer much more immersive experiences, much better experiences for customers, when they are looking to make decisions around property and not just buying. You see, I think one of the challenges is buying is such an infrequent activity that offering that super fantastic experience is maybe top of people's list of priorities. But if you want to continually engage people for any decision around their properties, then that is very important. So for example, that immersive experience could not only allow someone who's looking at perhaps to rent or buy to see what an apartment in a particular condominium block might look like, but it can also give them kind of information about renovations that they could perhaps put in their apartment or an apartment that looks similar to that. But it could offer, potentially a much wider variety of immersive experiences than just one that is centered around purchasing alone.
Yeah,
I think, sorry, and I think the one thing I'd add to that is we should also remember that some of the experiences are going to be local and very local. Some of the examples I discussed, some of them are going to be cross-border. So a lot of what we're doing right now, for example, is live streaming of Southeast Asian real estate into China. So you got Chinese consumers logging in to experience real estate over here. They want to invest. They can't get on a plane and fly into Singapore or KL or Bangkok. So we're making it available to them using digital technologies and immersive tech.
Yeah, exactly.
If you add 5G to this, the level of experience that you can provide. And I think what's interesting to see is 5G, you're seeing many of the countries kind of in lockstep. It's not quite like 3G where you had some countries that were, 2, 3, 4 years ahead of the rest of the world. I think in this case, you're going to see many countries sort of evolve at the same time. So you're going to see those kind of, and then you're going to see something that's hyper local. So for example, construction hard hat, augmented reality. Construction sites already have hard hats with augmented reality. Add 5G to it, the sort of the fidelity of the solution to the construction.
So exactly. You could reach out to consumers in Singapore about investment opportunities in Vietnam or Thailand that could be very attractive to them, and you'll have enough information about those individuals to know what kind of opportunities or what kind of offers you might seek to push in their direction. So that's another ideal way of using technology, and obviously 5G will play a major role in enabling that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think just the whole raft of services that we'd experience, given the biggest focus in any industry today that we talk about when we talk about digital transformation is customer experience. I think what technology can offer in this real estate sector, I think, is just really a completely different level of experience that customers can get, but also bring the world closer to them, right? So at the moment, it's a very, as Hari used the word, hyper-local market, but you have now the opportunity to allow people to have a much broader reach in terms of investment opportunities as well. Just shifting gears a little bit, immersing tech is just a fantastic topic. I think there's and Hari, I know I've been following ProptyGuru, and I know some of the work that you guys are doing. Some that's already visible to us, some that I know that you're not privy to talk about because you've got things coming up, and we're not going to use this session as a training ground for some of your competitors, but so we'll leave those for the time being. But we do see that there is different applications of technology in the whole space of PropTech as well, whether it comes to maintenance or building management and efficiencies and so on. And we've seen a lot of these come up in the last few years, right? We know that there are drones that do building inspections in Singapore, and we know that that's been in play for some time, but still very niche. This is a question, I guess, for the both of you. Do you see that post-COVID, that with the real estate sector, it is going to hurt? The real estate sector will hurt. We know that. And as they come out of it, do you see that there's going to be more adoption to drive greater efficiencies around building management, building maintenance, or rather predictive maintenance?
Or even construction as well.
Yeah.
Shall I jump in there first? Do you mind if I jump in there first, Harry? Yeah, I think, again, I think you could argue that in the kind of building management area as well, it's an area where way more technology could potentially be used than is being used. And we've been talking for many years about all the different IoT possibilities within buildings and robots being used for construction and so on. A lot of this stuff is not new, right? And drones being used for inspections. And yeah, in many parts of Singapore, drones are already being used as a way of inspecting and visualizing defects in buildings, predominantly commercial ones. But again, I think this will be an example. I think this scenario we're in, the COVID-19 one, will kind of force a lot of people in the wider property business, the commercial business as well as the residential one, to adopt technologies and use them more rapidly than they'd originally planned. So to push forward those, let's describe them as digital transformation projects, where they look at ways of maintaining and managing those businesses very effectively with very little human involvement. So they look at ways of minimizing the manned and unplanned maintenance of elevators, for example, by putting smarts and sensor platforms in those elevators that send information back and forward, and where certain upgrades and repairs can simply be done over the air. And not just elevators, lighting systems, air conditioning systems, security systems, the lot. So I think that we'll start seeing, a much more rapid adoption of some of this, the sensor technology, let's call it Internet of Things technology, than we have seen to date. I think it really is going to expedite the development and the use of a lot of these technologies.
Yeah, and I think the one thing we shouldn't forget is before COVID-19, I'd say the most crying need, and I hope it continues to be a big area of focus for the world, has been climate change and the focus on sustainability. And that was definitely the focus exiting 2019, coming into 2020. And even for us at PropertyGuru, I think a lot of focus, even in the residential sector, at the apartment building level, the household level even, has been around what are some of those sustainable practices, in many cases using technology, that are possible. So everything from hydroponic farming at the top of homes to low energy light bulbs or smart light bulbs, smart energy usage within the house. We've been sharing a lot of editorial content already in all our 5 markets, and a lot of interest even in developing markets like Vietnam and Indonesia on this kind of tech. So I think it's also, I think what we've learned is this is not something that is up Maslow's pyramid. It's not sort of the luxury of the wealthy. In fact, if anything, I would say the emerging middle class are coming in more evolved. They're coming in saying, give us these smart homes, but not just smart locks. I think much more around energy efficiency, sewage, water, renewable solutions, and of course, self-sustaining food as well. And a lot of it uses technology. So I think that's another very interesting space that PropTech is definitely going into.
I think that's a very good point. Again, it's something that the people have been wishing for some time, and it's been some of these technologies associated with sustainability and efficient energy use and renewable energy use have not, perhaps been adopted as fast as many would have expected. But right now, given the situation we're in, it's a driver for more use of those kind of technologies. But I think also the very day-to-day issues associated with life after this, well, not life after, I guess the new normal, the new abnormal, when we start moving again and leaving our homes, we can expect this technology to be used for things like measuring footfall in buildings to ensure that there's safe distancing between people. I hope it doesn't go on for too long, but I have a feeling it will. And we've already in Singapore seen robots out in some of the parks, basically trying to ensure that people maintain safe distancing. So I think that we'll see the technology in the very short term being used just to monitor the number of people in confined spaces and to ensure that there is safe distancing, as well as doing things like measuring people's temperatures as they enter buildings and just taking recording their identity as they come in and leave. And we already have a basic system for that in Singapore, but I think we'll just see it used much more widely and much more efficiently, and working on a lot more metrics just to manage the post-COVID world in a safe way.
Yeah, and look, thank you, gentlemen. On that note, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I do want to say the real estate sector is one that's very personal to us. It impacts all of us in many ways, not just One, as Hari mentioned, it's one of the largest asset classes. So we have a lot at stake in the real estate sector. But more importantly, we touch and feel it every day, and it impacts us. The three critical elements of humanity are, food, shelter, and health. And so the real estate sector takes care of one of those three. And so I want to thank you guys. Thank you, Andrew Milroy, Principal Advisor at Ecosystem, for sharing your views. And Hari Krishnan, thank you very much, Hari, Group CEO of PropertyGuru, who along with his teams has the opportunity to lead the charge or lead the real estate sector into that post-COVID recovery by shedding more light and sharing experiences and learnings around the use of technology and digital transformation. So with that, thank you very much. I wish you both well, your families as well as your teams. Stay well, stay safe, and thanks again.
Thank you, Amit. Stay safe. Thank you.